welcome. We're so excited for you to join our Where Ace Takes You event tonight. And we're going to focus more specifically on pathways in engineering and medicine and STEM. And we have a couple of ACE graduates who are joining us to share a little bit more about their experiences. So just to give you a sense for a framework for the first part of our program, I'll facilitate a little bit of a conversation just about their experience in ACE, kind of what led them there and what led them to kind of the pathway that they're currently in. But then towards the end, my teammate, Catherine Wagner, will open it up for live Q&A. So as we're going through the program, definitely be thinking about questions that you would like to ask, and you can ask those live or chat them in. So we'll explain some more instructions on how to do that when we get to that point in the program. But just really grateful for you being here. And we really hope this is a helpful way for you to kind of learn a little bit more about the experience and can continue discerning this path. So with that, I'm going to ask each of our graduates just to share a little bit about themselves, where they went to college, where they taught in ACE, and what they're currently doing. And we found that it's kind of helpful to give an order. It's hard to read cues on Zoom. So maybe Tyler, if you don't mind starting us off, and then we'll go to Melissa and Liz.
Sounds great. Thanks, Bridget. Hello, everyone. I am Tyler Schumacher. I am from a small town in northern Wisconsin, and I'm in Wisconsin right now in Madison, but I'm from further north than that. And I just for ACE teaching third grade. It was incredible. I miss it very much so. Think about them often. And currently, I am working as a trainer at a healthcare software company called Epic. So kind of a combination of things that from my background and ACE that led me here, which I'll get to. And Bridget, did you want me to go like my path to ACE and path beyond ACE at this point right now, or just introduction myself?
Just intro for now. We'll dive into that in a second.
Then I'll pause. I'm Tyler.
Hi, my name's Melissa Jaskowitz. I'm from Kensington, Maryland, which is like right outside Washington, D.C. And I was placed in Tulsa and I taught middle school math and science. And right now I am a third year medical student, still in Tulsa at Oklahoma State University. And I am on rotations right now. So I'm using Epic a lot. So maybe we can.
Got your back.
That's like my day-to-day right now.
And I'm Liz O'Hare. I grew up in Southern Maryland in St. Mary's County, and I went to school at Mount St. Mary's University, and I taught in LA East, in the LA East community, or I lived in the LA East community and taught in Montebello, California. I taught high school biology and physics for 2 years. And I'm currently a medical scribe at the University of Florida. And I also use Epic. That's my entire job, to put everything that the doctors do into Epic. So we have a common ground here. Anybody who goes into medicine will likely use Epic. It's quite fun.
Great. And actually tonight's event is sponsored by Epic. Just kidding. Anyway, so a question that we get a lot from students as they're kind of considering a pathway to ACE is really sort of the why. What were the things that factored into your decision? What were kind of people that you sought out, and how did you just kind of go about making this choice to pursue 2 years of ACE, especially for each of you that maybe weren't necessarily on an explicit pathway towards education? And I know, Tyler, you were a little bit more than Melissa and Liz, but just thinking about some of those questions, maybe you could just walk us through that pathway for you and share a little bit about kind of like, why did you ultimately decide to do ACE in the first place? So we could go the opposite way this time. So maybe Liz, Melissa, and then Tyler.
Sure. So I studied biology and biochemistry in undergrad, and I knew from middle school that I wanted to go into some kind of medicine, and that was really confirmed through some research and shadowing that I did in college. But by my senior year of college, I knew that I wasn't ready to apply to medical school. I wanted to experience a career outside of medicine before committing my life to it. I knew that I loved it, but wanted to try something else. And I was really interested in teaching because I had tutored in undergrad and enjoyed that. And I love working with the high school age. because they're in a really good time of their lives where they can have deep conversations, but also still can be formed. And I remember how difficult high school was, especially as a teenage girl. And I wanted to be able to be there for the girls and the guys too, but especially for the high school girls and try to influence them in that way. So I decided to do ACE because of that. And I'm really, really glad that I did, because it gave me an experience outside of completely different from medicine, and ultimately showed me that I did want to do medicine because of my experience in teaching and working with the kids. Bridget, is there anything else you wanted me to go into, or I don't? Okay.
My story is pretty random. It definitely has like the fingerprints of the Holy Spirit like all over it when you look back at it. But I was a biology and chemistry major in college, and I had thought about medicine, but I was pretty unconfident. Like I didn't really know long term what I wanted my career to look like. But I had always kind of like wanted to do a teaching program. It was just something that had really kind of sparked my interest. And so I had an advisor who gave me these like 2 options, and one of them was in England and one of them was ACE. And I went to do the English one. And then it ended up like falling through. And so I worked for a year after school, but I still wanted to do a teaching program. And I remembered the ACE from that like old kind of person. And so I went back and went ahead and did it. And then after I was a middle school teacher and taught math and science, I was so confident. I was like, I can do med school, no problem. Don't worry about it. And so I decided to go.
And I also have sort of a non-traditional path to ACE. I was a business major in undergrad, and I worked in business for a couple of years. And I'm sorry, Melissa, were you done? Or was I pre? Okay. And I knew I felt called to do something else, and I thought it was teaching. And then I spent 6 months substitute teaching. I'm like, how am I going to become a teacher? Like, what's the best way forward? And I stumbled across a program called ACE. I had never heard of it before because I went to a really small school and that just wasn't on the radar. And it just all worked out serendipitously. And yeah, I figured if I was going to pursue teaching, I want to do it the right way and go through a really great program, which I learned very quickly that ACE was. So I suppose the big takeaway for me there was just being open and really listening during the whole process, because I mean, a guy can pull you in like very unexpected directions, and that's absolutely what happened on my ACE journey, but I'm so grateful it did.
Thank you all so much for sharing kind of parts of that experience. And I think I'm curious for you all to speak to, when you kind of look back on your ACE experience and you think about what you're currently doing, what are kind of takeaways that you have? What are things that you feel like you've learned that continue to impact or inform your current work or your current area of studies? And it can be very specific to like classroom experiences. It could be in community life, the degree track, whatever kind of comes to mind. So Tyler, if you don't mind kicking us off, and we'll kind of go back that other way.
For sure. I think as a teacher, I'm doing things that are loosely teaching related now. Like I train adults on how to use Epic. And so I work in kind of like a intersection between my background of business plus teaching, but it's completely different. And I think the tools I learned teaching and through ACE, namely mostly flexibility and adaptability, can translate to any career. And I think they especially do so in this field. So yeah, I mean, teaching is a really dynamic job, and you have to learn to adapt and roll with the punches, to use a cliche. And I think that has really set me up for success in my current position. And just like, and Melissa mentioned this, just the confidence that you gain after teaching and knowing that you can do a really hard thing, like it makes everything else seem like you can do it. Like you can get through things. So that's what I've taken with me, among other things.
Yeah, I probably like could not like list out all the skills that I got from teaching that helped me in my day-to-day in med school, but I think like the two that stand out to me the most from like my preclinical years, so just 1 and 2 when you're just studying all the time and you have these big tests and stuff, was just like the confidence from like being on the other side of the desk and like telling people like you can learn anything, like you really can, and like knowing like the psychology behind that and like how true it was gave me a lot of confidence, like working through like those like just challenging like clinical year or preclinical years, because I knew that you can learn anything, so that was really cool. And then from the clinical years, like now just being in rotations, every time you're in like a patient encounter, it's like a 3-minute mini lesson, because you have to educate. So much of medicine is patient education. Like you have to, teach someone in like really short amount of time, like what their disease process is or what they need to do to stay healthy. And being a teacher has helped me enormously with that, because one, I can I'm pretty good at telling like when someone has no idea what I'm talking about, because I know that look well from teaching. But then also just being able to kind of like, explain things maybe in a more like concise way or stuff like that. So it's definitely helped me in the clinic and in the hospital and stuff like that too.
I definitely agree with what both of you said. And I have to add on also communication and responsibility for sure are two big things that I learned from ACE. Being a medical scribe, I'm working with so many different doctors, nurses, and PAs, and I just follow around whoever's there and take notes for them. And I'm often having to chase them down to get different parts of information that I need for the note. And it can be intimidating talking to these attendings who are brilliant and a little bit scary sometimes. And doing ACE and having to talk to so many different students and parents and confront them in a very clear way when maybe I was nervous or had some kind of question. I learned how to do that and now bring it into my job. And I work with a lot of undergrads and then some grads as well who maybe this is their first full-time job, or for some of them it's part-time, and so they're not quite used to the long hours. And these are not long hours compared to ACE, like a 10-hour shift. It's like, okay, sure, that's easy. I get to go home and I don't have work once I get home, which is a crazy thing. But ACE really taught me how to set a schedule, be responsible, and be able to communicate with the people who I need to either give information to or get information from, and do that in a very clear way too.
Thanks so much to you all. That's really helpful. And it's kind of nice to hear some crossover in some of the experiences that you've had so far. I think sometimes when students are considering ACE, they're hesitant about saying yes because they feel as though it will set them back or they won't be on the track that they've envisioned for themselves. Especially sometimes like a gap year seems more doable than a 2-year immersion with graduate coursework. So for each of you, especially, thinking of you, Melissa, as you've made that transition into med school, I'm curious, like when you're applying for your position or you're applying to schools, how do you convey like what ACE is? How did you kind of use that to your advantage? Because in a lot of ways, it's a different kind of experience than the typical applicant. So I'd just be curious of like how you spoke about it, how you articulated it, or if there were anything like feedback wise that you got from an employer or from an interviewer about like this experience, if anything kind of comes to mind for you. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. So if someone wants to kind of jump in to start us off with this question.
I can start with this one because I not only did ACE, but I also did a year after undergrad. So I worked in business for a year, then I did ACE for 2 years. And then I actually did a bonus year and I taught for a 3rd year in Tulsa, so at my ACE school. So I was actually 4 years and then I went to med school. And honestly, it has been nothing probably. I mean, like I'm a little bit older than my classmates, but not that much older. And it has only been like a positive, like my experiences really like have helped me. We had a really long like meeting today applying for residencies and just going over your CV and stuff like that. And I think for ACE, everyone who I've talked to about it has been really positive, especially in the medical community, because I think people do realize how much educating is a part of medicine and how much communication is. And so teachers are really good at that. And so that's been something. And then I think also just the interpersonal, like working with so many different people really helps. And anytime you have experience that's different and like makes you just a more well-rounded person, pretty much helps you in like any job that you're going to be doing. So.
And I'd echo that same thing. I found very similar things to be true when I was applying to different jobs. ACE, in my experience with ACE, only served as like a really good talking point. Like everybody wanted to know more about it. Like it never was a hindrance at all. Like in every single interview, like I would, if they were just looking at my resume, it was always such a, oh, tell me more about that. Like that's really interesting. Like I want to hear about that. So I found in the jobs I was applying for, I didn't have to like spin it a certain way at all or like pull things. I just let it speak for itself. And I think that people are very interested and receptive to what ACE is and what you go through or what you experience when you're in ACE.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Melissa and Tyler on that point. And I can't speak too much to the interview side of things because I didn't have very many interviews after ACE. I pretty much just applied to this program and got it, and they didn't ask too much about ACE because I had a connection here. So, but I can say from all of the doctors and nurses and PAs who I've talked to, and when they ask what I did, they all assume I'm an undergrad. And then I say, actually, no, I taught for 2 years. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Tell me more. Like, what brought you here? Why? And they have so many questions. And one of the attendings who works in the ER is, I believe he's on the board of admissions for University of Florida. And I started telling him about my ACE experience and he was like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. That sets you apart. That makes you so unique. You have to talk about that. And I have to say that when I was applying for ACE, I was hesitant as well. I wasn't ready to go to med school because I hadn't taken the MCAT. So I needed at least one gap year, but I didn't know if I wanted to take 2. And at this point, I'm going to also have 4, like Melissa, because I will apply next summer to either medical or nursing school, and then I'll have another year before I can matriculate. And I'm honestly fine with taking 8 gap years because I've learned so much from the time I've taken off between Peter's face is like, oh my gosh, I don't actually want to take 8 gap years, but I have learned so much from every month that I have off before med school that I know every experience that I have is going to teach me more. And ACE taught me a tremendous amount and showed me that I enjoyed teaching, but I want to be in medicine. So I would do it over again 500 times if I had the option to.
So much for those questions. And Jenny, I think you and I were thinking along the same thing because I just wanted to kind of give our panelists one final question that's very similar to what Jenny just shared. But for everyone on this call who may be in different parts of their discernment for ACE, I want to ask Tyler and Liz and Melissa to just say if you had to give one just quick piece of advice to the students here on this call, those who are discerning ACE, what advice would you give? Maybe we can wrap up with maybe Tyler, then Melissa, and then Liz to wrap us up here.
Sure. So my bite-sized piece of advice, I would say be brave, be open, and know that you can't get all the information that you want, like at one time about ACE. Like it's an experience that you just have to have. So be brave, be open, and just be okay not having like every single answer for your life right now.
I think my piece of advice would be to know that ACE is not, it's not the easy path, but that doesn't mean it's not the right path. You know, like it's really hard, but it's so good. So I think that's what I would say.
And I'm gonna be cheesy and use a quote, the quote that I used in my ACE application, which it worked because I got in. So you can use this quote if you want. And I also would tell it to my students. This is a quote by St. John of the Cross. And he said, where there is no love, put love and love will grow. And that quote really came to life in the classroom because at 8 a.m. when those teenagers, especially the girls, were so sassy with me and I did not want to bring love to that classroom, I would, and they'd respond with love. And same thing when I'd get a parent email that like was not very kind, it would respond with kindness and automatically the situation would diffuse. So even in medicine, if you decide to go into medicine or engineering, you'll find that too, no matter what you do, as a parent, as a husband, well, yeah, husband, wife, whatever you do, where there is no love, put love and love will grow. So that's not me, that's St. John of the Cross. There you go.
That is a beautiful note to end on. And for the students who are joining, maybe we can show some love to our panelists. If you want to throw something into the chat, use your emojis, just really, really grateful for them sharing their experiences and the various pathways that they've had both to and beyond ACE. So thank you so much for joining. And for the students here, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to be here. Maybe this is your first Where Ace Takes You event. Maybe you've been to all of them this fall. Regardless, just thanks for making the time to learn a little bit more about us. And we have a couple team members on the call here. We're always just happy to be a resource to you and walk with you as you're discerning at whatever point you are in the process. If you are considering an application, we do have our fall timeline deadline next week on November 2nd. And then we have our spring timeline deadline January 18th. So feel free to reach out to us too if you have any questions about the actual process itself. But this has been such an inspiring conversation, and we look forward to many more to come. But just again, thank you so much for being here and have a great rest of your night. Bye, everyone.